But now I don't see those cobbles and curbs. I don't hear the blues anymore.
Rough Trade is giving away a third of the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on exclusive vinyl pressing with exclusive bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprints, The Last Dinner Party, Julie Byrne and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get the Rough Trade Album of the Month, English Teacher's excellent debut album, This Could Be Texas, on exclusive Galaxy Gold for a third of the usual price. Here's English Teacher on a recent episode of 101.
How many opportunities do you get to write a debut album and have all of this, sport behind us? I don't know, I really like the idea of holding the bar as being like classic songs.
You only get one shot at a debut.
Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off the bar and on secondhand vinyl in store, and exclusive access to sold out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Go to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off the album of the month, English Teachers This Could Be Texas, today. This offer's available to UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this. You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder. It's where we hear from brilliant bands and artists about how they survive doing what they do and stories from the most defining moments of their lives in music. On today's episode, we speak to Kempner, the front person and main pillar of Palehound, released Eye on the Bat last year, which is just a phenomenal record. I kept on putting that on, and it's, when you find a record that feels a bit like glue, you keep on going back and back to it. Eye on the Bat by Palehound was that for me. Love this record a lot, and brilliant to hear El's stories about growing up near New York, going to shows, shredding, being into Elliott Smith. All that stuff is to come. So cheers for being here. Thanks to 2000 Trees, our excellent sponsors. Brilliant independent festival here in England, in Cheltenham. It's just a few hours away from London on the train. This year, the Gaslight Anthem, the Chats and Don Broco are headlining. Manchester Orchestra, Kids in Glass Houses, Creeper, Hot Mulligan, Hot Milk. Loads of brilliant bands at 2000 Trees this year. If you want to go, but you haven't yet got your tickets, I'd say hurry up. 10th to the 13th in July. It's a great feeling, great atmosphere at 2000 Trees. It's a great time. If you want to get 50 quid off your weekend ticket to 2000 Trees. Use the voucher code 101pod. It's on Dice. There's a small little section where it asks you for a voucher or a promo code. Put in 101pod there and you'll get 50 quid off your weekend ticket. All right, coming up, it's El Kempner from Palehound here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. 101 Part-Time Jobs. You grew up in, is it Newport or Westport?
Westport. Yeah.
I've been there once on a family
holiday. Oh, that's
holiday
so funny.
when I was like 17.
Really? That's hilarious.
Yeah, I remember going to the skate park.
Oh, yes, on by the beach. That one. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's one of the more fun parts of that town for people who can skate. I would go and just fake it and pretend and get in people's ways.
Yeah, but that's the best place to hang out.
It is. It is, but also I was not cool enough to hang out there, if I'm going to be real. Wasn't cool enough.
I mean, the skate park's a good place to find out about music.
It is, if you have, if you're cool enough to get your foot in the door for that conversation. I will say, I never ended up at that skate. I wish I could be like, yeah, man, days at the skate park, like, I wish I was that person, but I absolutely was not. I was just like not coordinated enough to be good at skating, not girly enough to be, or straight enough to be a skater's girlfriend. So I was just not even in the door. I was not even through the gate of the skate park. I'll just watch longingly.
Any of my friend groups historically, I've basically asked to be part of.
Yeah, same. And or I've rolled a joint and been like, hey, you guys want this?
You can do it. It's the one person that can do it. There we go.
You guys want to hang out? That's worked for me in the past. I don't really smoke as much anymore, but that's been a tact I've used.
Were there shows growing up in the town? Were there kind of DIY shows, or were people going into New York?
No, not really. There were people like putting on shows at teen centers. Like that's kind of what I was doing. There was like a local teen center that would book bands. And when I say book, I mean like, we were not getting paid. I would play a set. Yeah. And, one time I think I asked the guy for $20 for gas money and he just looked at me like I'd like killed his dog. And it was just like, yeah. So that was kind of the vibe, was just like playing for the 6 people who like weren't invited to a party that night. It wasn't like a cool scene. Like it wasn't like they're playing a show, like we're gonna go. I didn't like go to local shows. A lot of that scene was a little older than me and a little further into the state, like around Hamden, Connecticut. That's where bands like Ovlov were. Okay. Not Hamden had a venue called The Space. But Ovlov was from Newtown, so they were like a Connecticut band I knew about, and there were some people in New Haven who played, but I didn't really have the intel or the coolness to reach those spaces at the time.
You got to surround yourself with those people. You got to surround yourself with cooler people that can introduce you to those things, if possible.
If they want to be surrounded by you. I tried. I'm telling you.
Where did you find out about it? I guess Tumblr era?
Yeah, but I wasn't really on Tumblr. So what I started doing, basically I made some friends that were older than me that I met outside of high school, and they were in bands in Brooklyn. And so once I was like 16, 17, I started taking the train into Brooklyn to go see shows. That's when I started like really actually understanding what DIY was. And what people were doing, like what shows were outside of venues that, were ticketed, like, me going to see Avril Lavigne or something play at the, Twitter Center, or something like that,
16, 17, getting the train. I don't know. It's still a scary age to get the train by yourself.
Yeah, but that train is pretty mellow. It's a commuter rail from Connecticut to New York. It's like a lot of just commuters and people, business people. Yeah. So it's just, honestly, that was not a very scary train. Getting into the city and then getting on the subway was a different story, because that was like before smartphones really were like, happening. And so it was like writing down directions on a sheet of paper. Okay, take this train to this stop and make sure you're going this direction and make sure you are going, you see this stop on your way to this stop, like that stuff. That was the scary part, was like being in the New York subway system and not understanding where the hell I was going half the time. Yeah.
And then you end up somewhere in like a venue and you're like, you feel like everyone knows each other. I'm projecting here, obviously, but like you go to a show and you're like, everyone knows each other. Who do I speak to? You start playing around with your hands.
And I was one of the youngest people there at those shows. And so I was like very self-conscious of that. And I think the people around me were rightfully conscious about how they interacted with me, because I was like 16, 17, like, thank God I was lucky not to be surrounded at that age by like creepy dudes or anyone that was like, hey, trying to get me to do drugs or trying to get me to sleep with them. It was a really good community. It was through like Exploding in Sound Records, so then I ended up putting out my first couple releases with. They welcomed me into that community in a way that was really, really lucky. That's the word I keep on using. There was no sense of exploitation. There was no sense of tokenization really at the time that I was catching on to. And I was a, teenage girl and very ripe for taking advantage of in any way, career-wise, romantically. So I think it was just, I got really lucky by getting kind of like having a community of mainly guys, like who were in kind of grungier bands, just kind of actually respecting me for what I did and, engaging with me in like very appropriate ways.
You were playing guitar then? You were shredding then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd been playing since I was like 7. So I'd been playing, it would have been like a solo, like when I say solo, I mean like just be like in my room, maybe playing a song once a year at the school talent show for like 10 years up until that point. And then I started playing shows in Brooklyn when I was like 17, 18.
What was your happy place? Like when you were at home, if you'd come back from school, you'd go to your room, you'd play you'd put on your guitar. What would you play along to?
Elliott Smith. That was my big one. Like my parents are divorced and my mom lived in this house where I had this bedroom that was like all wood paneled walls.
Yeah, that's very Elliott
It was
Smith.
like it was like a very 70s, like kind of 1-story house. And my room was on the other side of the house from her room and my sister's room. So I could smoke weed in there and get away with it. That was my happy place when I was in high school, was just like smoking weed alone in my room with my laptop out with GarageBand open, just like writing and recording songs and listening to music and as much as I could.
I mean, I think of Elliott Smith and I just think that even just the melody of A Fond Farewell to a Friend is really like life changing, because that melody is just cracks it wide open. That like da 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 da, it could be a guitar line.
Oh yeah, everything he wrote was like, like that, where he's just this underrated guitar player, I would say still, even though people do love his playing, just like, and he just blew totally the lid off of all of what I had thought I knew about songwriting. And he was huge for me in high school. And bands like Deerhoof, also huge for me in high school. St. Vincent, huge for me in high school. Like, people who are these like shreddy guitar players, math rock players. Like, it wasn't just Elliott Smith. But if we're talking about like someone who I really could put the focus on for those years, I would say him.
I mean, when I got into Elliott Smith, that was like a new layer of like indie music, if you like, kind of people who didn't really... like it's a trope to say, but like break through, or however you want to call it, they would maybe get their records reviewed and they'd get a good 4-star out of 5 in Rolling Stone or Mojo or whatever, but you wouldn't see them on flyers in the back of magazines, for example.
No, they weren't like winning Grammys.
It's an extra layer, like, and you start thinking, oh wow, this world's really very big in terms of how many records and musicians there are.
Yeah, and for me, that was a big thing of like how many there were. Where I was like obsessed with the Breeders as well and Pavement. I was like I'd met some older friends who had like turned me onto that stuff, because I was the oldest child that my parents had, so I didn't have like a older sister to turn to for that stuff. So that stuff really, that's the music that I like really connected to, just like as I started getting more intentional about writing my own stuff.
My stepdad got me a pile of replacement CDs for my 18th birthday.
Yeah,
and it just
awesome.
took me years to get through. At first it was like Stink and like Kids Don't Follow. I was like, this is sick. But Tim didn't really hit. And then those, I think Replacements were the first band for me that I was like, okay, this is going to take me quite a few years to get into. So a lot of the songwriting kind of goes and veers in kind of awkward directions sometimes, and you don't get it on the first listen.
No,
and that's like a big lesson.
Totally. Deerhoof were like that for me. Like Deerhoof were a band that like the first time I heard them, I was like, this is weird and I can't understand a single word she's saying. And then I listened to like the next record, I listened to like Milkman, and I was like, this is sick. And then I listened to like Apollo, and I was like, this is super weird, but also sick. And then I heard Runners 4, and I was like, well, this is the best record I've ever heard in my life. So
it's funny how physical those records can be. I remember hearing Crooked Rain and like getting a weird taste in my mouth. You know
I mean, they sound weird. It's like, well, he's not singing very well, and the lyrics make sense sometimes and don't make sense other times, which makes me feel kind of dumb, or like I'm like not understanding something, but then I'm still like, 10, 12 years later, I'm still not understanding those lyrics, but
And those records, I played guitar, and I was really big into Billy Bragg, and that was kind of my thing. I got a capo and learned to play some pretty jangly, 4-chord songs. But listening to Pavement and Replacements or Deerhoof, it's like I wouldn't know how to write a song like this. I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah, I mean those are like when I listen to like bands like that. That's when, because I'd always been just a solo artist, and I still am. I still kind of like write all of the parts for the most part on my records and produce my records. Like my newest record, I like largely produced with Sam Owens, Sam Evian. But like that was always a mystery to me. It was like, whoa, what's it like being in like a band, like a collaborative band where everyone brings something else to the table and you guys like sit down and you write together. And I've actually still kind of like never been in the band with more than 2 people where that's been the case, and so that's still kind of a mystery to me, and something I would like to pursue at some point in my life is just kind of how to collaborate that way when you get like a band like Deerhoof. Like there's not one person that is bringing the X factor to that band. It's like every single member is bringing a different arm of the X, and it's so inspiring. They're one of my favorite bands of all time.
You've never felt tied down? From everything that I've read that you've said and what I gleaned is that you never felt tied down to need to have permanent band members, and that you can be flexible. I feel like that's something that's always happened, but it feels like a fairly new idea. It feels like a pretty innovative idea.
It is and it isn't. I think it's like, it's not that I never set out the intention of not finding band members. I think it's just, I started so young. I started when I was 19. And it's like first band lineup. Okay, 2 of you can't drive. Okay, that's not going to be really work for DIY touring. Okay, let's move on. Okay, second band lineup. This person really can't handle the stresses of touring. Okay, let's move on. All right, we got the same drummer. All right, this new bassist, just doesn't brush his teeth. Maybe we should find someone else.
Hey, don't out me like that on here. Stop talking about me like that.
No, he's like the sweetest guy, but just like stuff like that just like, and I was playing with people a little bit older than me, and then I've kind of like the first bandmate that I still play with, is Lars, my friend Lars, my best friend. Lars,
and he's across that new record, isn't he?
They are, they use they, Sorry. But yes, no, you're good. They are across Eye on the Bat, like totally. And they are like an amazing multi-instrumentalist, and they play bass live with me. So that's someone that's like been like the longest running member of this band. And awesome. It feels great to find someone who I want to play. That's the thing. I'm not like, I need to keep it moving. I need to get a new bassist in here. I need to get someone else in here. Like once I find someone who works, it works,
There's a lot to think about. Like this is a full-time job. 101 Part-Time Jobs is the name of the show. And it started off because friends of friends were always getting different part-time jobs. I did a similar thing. And it's like, okay, we're getting into our late 20s now. How do we make this work? Like, how do I feel good? How do I not feel mad all the time?
Yeah. And it's fucking hard. Can I swear? I'm
course.
assuming yes. Yeah, I mean it's fucking hard. It's like it's very it's just, the person like having being a boss, in my case, and having to kind of like call shots on behalf of my bandmates and like steering the ship on tour. That's tough. I'm not built for that kind of thing, in terms of like socially as a person. So I've had to do a lot of learning and a lot of growing to be ready for this kind of role. I think like a leadership role of my own music and my own touring and stuff like that. And I only recently really started using a tour manager on tour. I used to do all of our tour managing. So, it's definitely something that like, it's a very hard thing to do. And for my bandmates, it's very much like part-time, because we don't tour constantly, thank God. And it doesn't, we still definitely can't make enough money for, me to be able to like put band members on a payroll that is sufficient for them. And that's the reality for most of the people I know.
And that's a conversation. You don't really hear that much, do you? You know, I mean,
No.
money's always going to be awkward. Money's going to be a weird thing forever, you know, until the end of our lives, and paying friends and paying musicians, you know, it's such a difficult one because it's a privilege playing music, sure, but it's actually like, some people need to do it, you know, and it's I think it's a very person to person thing. I don't think if you read about this in a newspaper article or a feature in the New York Times, you're going to be hearing one person's opinion on how musicians should act or should react. But it is just a totally individual choice, and each to their own, right?
Yeah. I think it's just like, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and someone else who's in a position like mine, just another artist that is struggling in, you know, this way where it's kind of like, you know, I wish I could afford to pay my bandmates more. I wish we could afford to travel in this kind of vehicle. I wish we could afford to get this many hotel rooms, like whatever, stuff like that. And it just like, you know, it's a business. The music business is just built on exploiting people's dreams and the sacrifices they'll make for them. And it's just, I mean, you know, all entertainment is at the end of the day, but we don't have a union, you know, we don't have like, you know, it's just really rough out here with that stuff. And, you know, the other thing is you don't get paid in a way that is like thinking about the individual at all. It's like, okay, here's your $1,000 flat fee for a show. That sounds like a lot, right? But you have 4 band members, you know, and then it's like, okay, well then you get $250 each. Wrong. You know, you have to pay how much for the hotel room, how much for the van, how much for the whatever. And it's just out the door and before you even get it. So it's like, that's the thing that's really also tough about touring, is that it has nothing to do with like how much you should get paid an hour, each musician who shows up to the venue, like how many musicians are playing. Okay, how much do we pay them based on that? It has nothing to do with that, which is really tough. And is not very much like any other industry that I know about.
How do you reconcile that? How do you like come to a peaceful, you know, period at the end of that sentence?
I can't, you know, because it pisses me off. It pisses me off on behalf of, you know, I'm very privileged in a lot of ways. And I also have other ways that I can, like, I do a lot of teaching, you know, and I can, you know, stuff like that, like when I'm not on tour. But like, I have a lot of friends who've had to like quit music because of this stuff, and who can't tour anymore, and who can't play with their bands anymore, and who can't tour to places they want to travel to, and like whatever, where people would be blessed to hear them. Sorry, I sound religious, I'm not, but people would be really lucky to hear them. So it's just this whole industry. It pisses me off. I'll never find peace in it, because I think it's just something that is so toxic to touring. And, you know, I think, you know, even like we're about to tour over, you know, overseas. It's crazy expensive. Like, that's the ultimate privilege that we get to do that. I haven't toured overseas in like 8 or 9 years because it hasn't been really possible since then, you know, and it's barely, you know, if you talk about what's possible, quote unquote, it's like, how much are you losing? And I was on a really, I'm not going to say who it was, but, you know, this was kind of broken open to me like five or 6 years ago. I was on an artist I love. We were playing the same festival. Very successful artist, someone if I said her name, you'd be like, what? And I was on her tour bus and we were talking. She tours in the US, she tours on huge venues, she tours buses. And she was like, we're going to Europe soon and I'm fucking losing so much money. And I was like, you're losing money in Europe? You know what I mean? Like, and you're, and like, yeah, just people. And like, if I said the name of this artist, you'd be totally shocked. But that's the case on almost every level, unless you're, you know, arenas or something, you know.
It totally illustrates that idea. We kind of live in this rented world where everything is temporary, you know, everything you're like borrowing for a little bit.
Yeah. And we're borrowing people's talent, and then but wouldn't it be so great if we could just keep it, and if like they could keep it, and if they could just kind of like feel, if we could have that artist we love feel confident that they can tour through and put on a show for us and we'll be there, you know, and that we won't have to. And also for the audience member, I get why people don't buy as many tickets. It's what, $50 with fees, you know. I'm talking about, I'm an American talking from my American perspective here, but you know, it's just, it's an
like
unsustainable
30 quid with fees here. It's 25,
crazy.
30.
Yeah. And then drinks, and then, you know, venues take cuts of your merch, and it's just, it's, you know, it's shocking.
One of the things that drives me crazy is that I do this podcast where I speak to people like you all the time, where I'm like, these are great records, they're touring, you know, they have people around them, they're an organized unit. And I understand that these things, it comes down to being a small business that sometimes makes money and sometimes loses money. But when I go see a band and they're on stage, in that moment, I just kind of forget all that. And I'm like, wow, this person knows everything. I'm like, this person's living a wonderful life. They have their shit sorted out.
And in my case, by the way, that's true. I am living, I can say, and this is a huge gift, but I can say I am living a wonderful life. Like, I do get to tour. I do get to travel with my friends and play music. But, I just wish that it was not, I wish it was wonderful then off the road. I wish it was wonderful on paper. I wish it was, I wish it was wonderful in the sense that then like all my bandmates didn't have to find other jobs and other sources of healthcare and, shit like that. But what you're feeling, I just want to be clear too, what you're seeing is actually true though, because when you see someone on stage, that is when people feel like that's like the moment we do it all for. So that's the thing, is that like when you see a band on stage and you're like, they've got it all together, it's because in that moment they really do, and they're happiest in that moment, and they've got the control, they've got the over their situation, and they're doing what they want to do. And that's that's why shows are so powerful and why we need them so much, is because you really do see people in their element and in their height. But then you forget about like how unglamorous the rest of that person's day was, and will be after, as soon as they get off stage.
You want people to go home and be able to relax, and because there's enough transparency and accountability perhaps in music where that people go home and have a tough time, and people have mental illnesses and struggles that we don't see, and we're reading more and more about that. You see that happens, and want people to have a sustainable life, not just financially but also like spiritually and mentally when they go home, and have that kind of balance.
And it's really hard for musicians to find that these days, when there's like no source of health care. There's like, if you're not actively working, you're not making money. Like royalties, streaming, obviously it doesn't exist for most people, and in a real substantial way. And yeah, I mean, that's, especially living in Brooklyn, or like if you go out to LA, it's like you'll walk into a coffee shop and a member of your favorite band is there, like, and working behind the bar, and like, and they just got back from tour and they had to work the next day, and they, and then that does affect like, the spirit and, the drive, and it's, it's designed to fail.
That's not going to change anytime soon. And maybe that could be, it's not right, but maybe it's okay that the musicians work side jobs, because that's not going to change.
No, it definitely is. It's just like, I think it's just this misconception between like how a musician is treated versus like the reality of their situation, right? Where you could be like, well, that person's got it all. I think there's nothing wrong with working another job at all. I think it's like healthy and normal. And I actually think like working exclusively in music can be really detrimental to someone's health, and mentally, of course. But I do think that it is like just part of the thing that is frustrating, is then that like disconnect between the public perception of an artist and then like the actual life that they're living. And every time people fight for more streaming, for more rights online, you just see people in the comments like, what are these like assholes complaining about? They just get to tour and play music, like they're rock stars, they got everything. And it's like, actually no. Like, so that's when that gets frustrating, is when there's just this lack of empathy for a musician, because they have this idea of them as this glamorous rock star who's just lazy or just this or just that. And it's like, nope, they're actually just were on tour for 5 weeks and didn't have a moment alone.
It's interesting when you see someone like, I don't know, Dinosaur Jr. comes to mind, and you wonder how their band works. They're like a punk band that was like, Dinosaur Jr. were a band way before I even sort of remember. You know what I mean? They're a lot older than I presume. And so the amount of like kind of different iterations in the way that they organize and go about their business must have changed so many times between the 80s and 2024.
I can't even imagine being a band for that long. Like, that's blows my mind. We just finished doing a run with Slater Kinney, and, they were so inspiring and so amazing, partly because I'm just like, holy shit, how you guys have been in a band like the entire time I've been alive, and you're still working together, and it's still evolving, and that is work. Damn.
This new record is so killer. I like the way the first track is a bit of an anticlimax opener. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it definitely
the first few listens I skipped it and would go straight into second track. And then I'm like, no, okay, you get into it. And that's part of the joy. That's part of the joy of liking a record.
I like putting that song first. I actually, for that reason specifically, I wrote that song and didn't really think much of it and kind of forgot it for a while, the song Good Sex. And then I actually did a solo tour opening for Adrienne Lenker in like December of 2021. And I was so nervous to open for her because she's, obviously the master. And so I was like, I got to do something to really catch people's attention when I get on stage, because I just know it's going to be like, people are just obviously going to be so excited to see her. So I was like, I'm going to open with this song that's really vulnerable. And it like shut everyone up the second I started, because it was just like this story that people were like, are they actually saying this right now? This is weird. And so I was like, that could be a good way to open the record. So after that, I was like, just do that.
I like the way even like the title kind of makes me think, oh, this is going to be a kind of Sunday morning sex song.
No,
and it's
yeah.
It's a great surprise.
It's like a weird song. Yeah, it's a really weird one.
Are you going back? Are you going back a few years for these stories?
Well, it's less that, but then that the record takes a few years to like record and put out, from like from the inception of a song to the release of a song. There's just so much time, especially at that when I wrote that song. No, I didn't even go back at all to write that song. I wrote that song very much in the moment that, I was feeling those things. And then that just happened to be like 4 years ago. And then of course with pandemic and stuff, like this record took a little longer. So some of these songs were way older.
And shredding on the acoustic, was that like, we're doing this, we're going to try this? Yeah,
I love shredding on the acoustic. I mean, that was something like I mentioned earlier, the Breeders, like Kim Deal, it's just always up there with like an acoustic guitar. I mean, she's up there with a Strat sometimes too, but she's up there just like banging on a distorted acoustic guitar. And I was like, that's so sick.
Did you have your awesome folk punk years?
A little bit. I love Donnie DeFranco. I mean, if that counts as old folk punk. I mean, I think, she's a kind of like a feminist like icon. She had her own record label. Big American like feminist icon, Ani DeFranco. Yeah, incredible guitar player, and that's why that. I mean, like that was like middle school for me. I like first heard of her and was like, holy shit. But she's like, kind of folk punk for sure. I would say.
Yeah. And were you writing kind of lyrics when you were? Were you writing journals, kind of those kinds of entries, and getting your thoughts, getting your ducks in a row?
Yeah, definitely. I was doing a fair amount of that. I was definitely doing a fair amount of journaling, but not really consistently. Like I've sadly never been a consistent journaler.
It's difficult.
I wish I was, but I'm not.
Duolingo is the next best thing.
Oh my God, I don't even do that. I don't even learn another language. I'm just playing Nintendo Switch. It's so bad.
That's a good point. Switch is your thing. I mean, what do you do? How do you kind of not play guitar? What do you do in order to not play guitar?
I do love video games. I love playing my Nintendo Switch. I do like to read a lot. If you catch me in a reading phase, I'll go in a phase and then I'll just be like burning through books, and then I'll like take a week off and just forget it. Forget how much I love to read and watch TV. Do watch a little too much TV probably.
What's good recently? Good TV.
Well, my girlfriend is watching The Sopranos for the first time for her, and I've seen it a couple times, and it's my favorite show. So I've been rewatching that with her, which is great. I watched, I don't know, just a bunch of bullshit, besides that. Nothing
they got a series called
proud to say I've
Race
watched.
Across the World. Is a pretty good BBC iPlayer show. And
is that just like Amazing Race kind of thing?
Sounds like it. Yeah. I say exactly with full force, and I have no idea.
No, but it sounds Race Across the World does sound like it's the same.
It's
same
good
concept,
dinner movie. It's good dinner TV. It's tea time TV.
Yeah, exactly. I live alone, and so I'll throw the TV on, and after I make some pasta or something, it's kind of.
So what are some of the part-time jobs that you've had along your way? What are some of the most memorable, stick out in your mind stories?
Well, I worked at a vegan restaurant as a line cook, where I learned that really taught me how to cook. And so I loved that job.
Good skills.
And good skills to have. I lived in Boston for a while, so I had that job there. My longest running job while I lived in Boston was I worked at the Harvard bookstore warehouse. So I worked at a warehouse that was full of used books and Harvard merch. And it was mainly, the export was mainly supposed to be used books, but mainly my job was just shipping Harvard sweatshirts out to people with notes like, oh, I'm so proud of you, love grandma and grandpa.
So you received the personal message and you were the scriber.
Yeah. I'd like write it down on a little piece of paper or print it out or something. And, it's me like smoking weed in the warehouse, like at the age of like 22, just, so proud of you.
Did you have any creative license there? Did you add anything ever?
No. No. I mean, my boss was awesome. He was this, big dude, Jerry, who I'm still in touch with. He's awesome, and he was just very much had a fuck it mentality. So as a boss, that I wasn't under a strict watch by any means on that job,
good.
but I was mailing Harvard merch.
I think having an unstressful job is pretty rare.
No, that was really lucky. That job couldn't have been less stressful. That job I might have liked a little more stress at that job, honestly. I got bored as hell. I would be like, do you want me to do this? He'd be like, no, you're not getting paid enough. He was very like, fuck the man. He was like, no, you're not getting paid enough to do that. And I was just like, but I want to do something. I'm so bored. Please.
That's it. It's hard. Me and my partner have this conversation all the time because she works over and above. I find it very hard to do things that I don't believe in. I don't know. It just feels like a very funny. I mean, I feel like I don't know what the generation above you and your family was like, but my parents' generation, it was like fucking get a job and then just stay there, even if you hate it. But I guess they could buy houses. I think that's probably the biggest difference, is that they could actually put money away, whereas you could be on £30,000 a year salary and not be able to save any money. So what's the point?
Yeah. Exactly. Actually, I got lucky. My parents are super supportive of me and always have been. And so I think like some people, their parents are raised that way and then they tell their kids to do the same thing. My parents were like scared of me like going down a similar, like my dad was just like, I don't want you doing what I did. Like, I don't want you just like picking something. And like, he was like, I wish I had tried this. I wish I had traveled here. I wish I had lived here. Like, I wish I had these, he doesn't live a life. He lives a good life and he's happily remarried and, he's happy. And he talks about how lucky he feels all the time with certain things. But that is one thing that he definitely like always kind of talked to me and my sister about, which was really, he was always like, he's always been super encouraging of me doing music.
Great to hear. And that is compounded, even if you're not on the gram, you're aware that people are posting photos when they go to Phuket or when they go to Australia, where you're always seeing people go on a holiday. And that obviously, you don't mean it to. And you could be the most well-meaning person ever, but you still be like, oh, fuck, my life sucks. And so that idea of being like, well, yeah, I am going to sort of scramble by and make things work. It just feels like I've done kind of both ways. I've had the full-time job and I've been unemployed, and I had more fun being unemployed. And I don't think I had much less money, ironically, when I was unemployed.
Really?
Well, just in that kind of funny way. Yeah. You live to your means, don't you?
Yeah. Did you travel?
Yeah, a little bit, but not really. I didn't do Australia or I didn't do backpacking or anything like that. But
by the way, backpacking I have no interest in. And I know that that's something you're supposed to do when you're young and stuff, but touring is as close as I'm getting to that. I'm not throwing a backpack on and walking. Yeah. Please, are you kidding? Tour, but walking?
Do you treat Palehound more like your job or more like a hobby that you have to be organized to get paid from?
Both. Yeah, both, I think, which is like a huge privilege. I'm really lucky to be able to do that and just to like enjoy my job and enjoy what I do. But, but it is definitely, I think, like, it's definitely feels like more of a hobby sometimes, in terms of like, I definitely make more teaching and
teaching guitar.
Picked up. Teaching guitar and songwriting, awesome. Doing private lessons over Zoom. I just picked up a gig. I can't say with who, but all of 2025 and probably further into 2026, I'll be playing guitar on a big tour for someone else. So I'm going to be a guitar player for a big tour, bus tour, and that's going to be like the most money I've ever made, so like way more than, so that's kind of like an interesting question is like hobby or both. It's like, well, sometimes it depends. Yeah. It depends. This tour, yes, I got paid this much. This tour, I'm losing this much. This tour, so yeah.
Did you have to make a difficult decision to do that? Because you'd have to, Palehound wouldn't be able to be so active.
It was difficult, but not that difficult because I kind of like Palehound. I love doing it, but I can't have it be my sole thing for a number of reasons. First of all, at this point, financially, it's not sustainable like that. Yeah. And second of all, because it's not sustainable that way, it's becomes stressful and it becomes harder to want to write. It becomes harder to want to like be engaged in it. I like start resenting it almost. Not resenting it because I'm not jaded. I am very grateful and love to tour, love to play shows, but I can see the seeds of resentment starting to bloom. If I like put all of my eggs in this basket, it just is not gonna, it makes it harder. It contributes to writer's block, because then I'm like, oh, do I write this song? But if I write this song, will it fit well on this next record? Will that sell? Will that lead to us playing this kinds of rooms? It's just all intertwined in this way that I really don't want it to be. And so I think it was kind of a no-brainer to take this other gig, because it'll be inspiring in that way, I think. And I'm like excited for Palehound to become like songwriting to become more of a hobby, honestly, less of a job for a second.
How many years did it take you to get to that point?
10 years. I mean, like, I'm here now. I mean, it was really like the pandemic, honestly, too. That kind of, I think, like, we just took lots of L's, lots of losses, and like had to, shit got canceled because of COVID. Shit got rescheduled and then canceled. Things didn't release to this kind of number. Things didn't, whatever, and it's just kind of, and I know so many people that feel this exact same way. But I do think that, like, after the pandemic, I was like, okay, let's like really give it a shot, like with this record, and see what happens. And this record did, I'm doing better than Palehound has ever done, but that's still really not that great. So it's like, that was my answer right there.
Yeah.
So it took all that time for me to be like, and I'm turning 30 this year. So I'm like, oh shit, I got, so
well, good on you.
I think it's kind of,
That's
thank you.
I mean, you're learning. That's all we can ever ask for, is that we're learning something every day.
Yeah.
If you learn something every day, you're doing fucking well. If you learn something once a month, that's pretty good.
Yeah. I'm more on I'm somewhere in the midpoint between that.
Hey, Al, thanks so much for chatting with me and
thank you.
Having this conversation. It's cool to kind of open up and explode that kind of, the thinking behind writing songs and releasing records and doing all of it.
Yeah. And I feel like I've been generally maybe negative sounding on this, but like, I think it's just like any sense of negativity that you hear is just because of how much love there is that I have for this. And I think, like, when I say things that are discouraged or like, words like that, it's like, it just comes from this love. It comes from what I said earlier, which is that it's like, I have this dream and this passion, and I've sacrificed a lot and will continue to, and everyone I know will too. And that's, I just wish that the people I love, the artists that I love, I wish that wasn't how it was built. I mean,
we spent so many years with that kind of velvet curtain pulled shut that it's refreshing. I think you can still totally love something, but be like, you know what, that part sucks. I think that's totally fine. Like, more of that, please, because nothing's perfect.
No, I have more faith recently in, like, local music circles and like community, like, around music than I have in a while. But that definitely is like, I think like COVID switched the touring landscape, made touring so hard that like local music is like going off in a way that it hadn't before. Maybe that's just my own personal experience, but I just think it's like about reframing and finding that love in other ways and different pockets and different forms. I love
the idea of musicians being completely just flexible and free, and just not being in that narrow lane of having to be like a traditional artist, and like playing with other people and not going on tour and playing heavy metal and also acoustic. And I guess I'm talking about Tony Molina. And it's like,
I was going to say, it sounds ultimately,
like, that's fucking cool. Like, do whatever you do. And like, we all have different lives. Some towns you can live in and work at the bar and get paid enough to pay rent and have fun with your friends. Other places you need a full-time job that's more of a daytime desk thing, that's more of a 30K salary thing. You've got to deal with what's in front of you, right? It's like dealing with your resources. That's what we did in the start when we were kids, picking up guitars and playing the local youth center. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is that it's just like comes, like, I'm always kind of trying to recapture that love that I felt at that point before I was aware of all the bullshit. I'm kind of always trying to reconnect to that part of myself that just finds catharsis and purpose in this. So I think that's part of the reason that it is going to be really good to take a step back from touring my own music as well, is just to kind of turn this back into just take the bullshit out for a second. Well, great to chat. Great to meet. Thank you. Yeah, great to meet you too. I like to end these, if I can, before you go, I like sort of hearing like some real work fails, like work gaffes, like fuck ups in the workplace. I've made my fair share. I mean, just by saying I can do things that I definitely can't when I was a labourer, for example, using big saws that I definitely shouldn't have done. And like, do you have any kind of memories, specific times, moments that you're like, that was a bad bad one.
Oh my God. I mean, like we've had to cancel so many shows because of COVID, which is like not really a fail. I mean, last week we had to cancel 4 shows because I lost my voice. We had to cancel 4 of our Slater Kinney shows because I lost my voice. And that was honestly, that felt like a bit of a fail because it just felt like my body kind of giving out after a certain amount of touring that we'd done this year and a certain amount of traveling. And I was like, damn, I'm like, my body can't handle this like I used to.
Yeah.
That kind of felt like a little bit of a fail there, but also not really my fault in that way.
Yeah. The music's always come first. Like that's the
always.
Yeah.
Yeah, always.
Fair fuck.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks very much. I know we talked about playing a song, so you feel, you could do a song if you'd be up for it, but totally fine if not, if your voice is not so good.
No, I'm happy to do a song.
What are you going to play?
I'm going to play the song Eye on the Bat.
Hell yeah. I've never done anything like this.
Really?
Well, I did it at the radio station that I used to work at.
You know what? I'm going to switch songs.
Oh, Ashley, do you have
All right, I'm going to do this song.
Do you have a gate on your microphone? I just didn't
you know
hear.
what? That's a good call. Yep, let me do something. Hold on. I deal with this all the time with my students.
There we go.
I'm always like, okay, under Zoom background noise, you're going to go to original sound for musicians.
Yeah.
Okay. Musicians. This song is Independence Day. We broke up on Independence Day, crying while the next door neighbors rage. Flashes of color on your face, the bass thumping, the chanting names. Our cat running under the bed with his tail between his legs. I'm gonna speed it up. A can of soda shaking up. With every truth the sky erupts, and we're still pulling on the tap. Foaming sugar in our laps. Sparkler in my throat, can't we just take it all back? Join the neighbors and go dancing with a rocket and a 6-pack. I am living life like writing the first draft, cause there's nothing to it if I can't edit the past. And even if I could, it would kill me to look back. No, I don't want to see that other path. I don't want to see that other path. Oh, to think a couple weeks before, night driving headlight corridor, that deer ran straight into your door. Who hit who, I'm still not sure, but we both made sounds I'd never heard us make before. Oh, what if we hadn't been running late? Oh, what if I forgot to hit the brakes? What if that beast had sealed our fate? Dug us both a single grave. Yeah, well, I thought it'd bring us closer. Yeah, I thought it was a sign, but all it did was drive the point home in my body and my mind. That I'm living life like writing a first draft, cause there is nothing to it if I can't edit the past. And even if I could, it would kill me to look back. No, I don't want to see that other path. 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 I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Living life like writing a first draft, cause there's nothing to it if I can't edit the past. And even if I could, it would kill me to look back. No, I don't want to see that other path. No, I don't want to see that other path. No, I don't want to see that other path. No, I don't want to see that other path. No, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see that other.
Yeah. Ow!
Thank you. It's so funny to play over Zoom. It's like, is this working?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. It's all right. It's all right.
Hey, Elle, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, man.
Later on. So there they were, Elle Kempner from the excellent Palehound, and what a treat to get Independence Day there, acoustic. Excellent stuff. Cheers for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you had a good time. I love doing these chats. If you haven't heard of this show and you're a newcomer, I'm putting out 2 episodes every week at least. All the bands and artists are exciting and interesting. And if you want to know more, you can click subscribe wherever you're listening to this, on Apple or Spotify. Subscribe to 101 Part-Time Jobs and get this every week. If you're an artist or if you play in a band, head to DistroKid to put out your own records, and you can get 30% off your first year by signing up at distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. Join 1 million other artists and bands putting out their own music, becoming their own record labels. DistroKid, and you'll be able to earn all your own royalties while your music's on Spotify, Apple, TikTok, YouTube, all the rest of it. If you want to put out a record, or if you know you've got a niece, you've got a nephew, a uncle, aunt, a colleague, they play music and they're trying to figure out how to put out their own music, DistroKid is super simple. For 30% off your first year, head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.